Hey, this is Morgan Pratt with the JMac for Congress campaign. If you're listening to this podcast, sounds like you like JMac. You can find out more about him by going to his Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube channel. Please remember to subscribe and rate us. Now coming up, more JMac.
Hello there, and welcome into another edition of the JMac podcast. So glad that you decided to join us once again as we talk about a very important subject today, school shootings. There was a report that was released last week, and I'll be honest, with all of the impeachment coverage and everything else going on, this Secret Service study did not get enough attention. And I wanted to share it with you, especially because if you are a parent, there is some important information here. This studied mass shootings going back quite a while, and they were able to look at every single aspect of mass shootings, the weapon used, the history of the individual, the guidelines and rules that existed at the schools. And they came to some pretty important conclusions. And the main conclusion they came to is that this is preventable. That school shootings are preventable because there are plenty of warning signs. Now, they didn't get into studying the weapon per se. They did talk about the availability of the weapon, so we'll talk about that. But the reason that I wanted to share this with you is because one of the things that we forget about is that at every mass shooting, there is a parent or parents who find out that their child was the shooter. And I can only imagine what this must be like to find out that you raised a child that has now become a mass murderer. No parent wants to ever find themselves in that situation. Or what about a school administrator who thought that maybe there was a concern but never did anything about it? Or what about a school friend who heard a student making threats and complaining and didn't do anything about it? These are all people that are carrying around incredible guilt and regret after a mass shooting occurs, all asking themselves the question, what if? What if I would have done something different? Well, I have to tell you, parents, we live in a time where we have to be proactive. We cannot sit back and think, well, no, not my child. Or, oh, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person who is being the busybody and complaining about something and maybe it's not real. We live in an era where see something, say something is real and it saves lives. And if your heart in any way, shape, or form suggests to you that something isn't right, you have to speak up. And when you do, you will save lives. Now, sometimes it's going to be a false alarm, and we just have to deal with that. But that's the society that we live in. Now, let's take a look at this Secret Service study. They found a lot of interesting things. First of all, most students who committed deadly school attacks over the past decade were badly bullied. They had a history of disciplinary trouble, and their behavior concerned others, but was never reported. So there it is. You have people who were concerned about the behavior of this individual, but they never said anything about it. They had these students who are becoming mass shooters. The vast majority of them had disciplinary trouble. In fact, many of them had been suspended the day before the attack occurred. Now, they also found in at least 4 cases, attackers wanted to emulate other school shootings, including those at Columbine High School, Virginia Tech University, Sandy Hook, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Now, this study from the Secret Service, they took a look at 41 school attacks from 2008 to 2017. And this is one of the things that just jumped off the page to me. They say in this report, these are not sudden, impulsive acts where a student suddenly gets disgruntled. And then they said also, the majority of these incidents are preventable. Listen to that again. These are not sudden, impulsive acts. They're planned out. They occur over time. In fact, they found that most of the students who are thinking about a mass shooting or carried out a mass shooting spend months, if not years, on the internet reading about mass shootings, reading about violence, participating in violent video games, looking into violence and researching it and really getting fixated on it. And so here we are, parents, asking the question, what is my son or daughter interested in? Are they having disciplinary issues? Have they been bullied? We have to be proactive about this, not just asking the question for our own children, but also listening to our children as they talk about other attackers. Now, some more, or not other attackers, but other friends of theirs. This report also says most attackers were male, 7 were female, 63% of the attackers were white, 15% were black, 5% Hispanic, 2% were American Indian or Alaska Native, and 5% were undetermined. Now, here's another key. The weapons used were mostly guns, but knives were used as well. One attacker used a World War II-era bayonet. Most of the weapons came from the attackers' homes, the investigation reported. Now, so there's another issue. So parents, being aware of your child's mental state, what they're focusing on, what they're fascinated with, are they having disciplinary issues? Are they being bullied? And do they have access to weapons in your home? This is a huge issue. I'm not a fan of taking away weapons from the masses because the minority can't handle that right. But I am a fan of parents being responsible and being aware of your children's state of mind and having those weapons locked up if you are in these types of circumstances. Now, here's some more information. The report said there's no clear profile of a school attacker, but some details do stand out. As I said before, many were absent from school before the attack, often through a school suspension. They were treated poorly by their peers in person, not just online. They felt mistreated. Some sought fame, while others were suicidal. They fixated on violence. They watched it online. They played games featuring it and read about it in books. 7 attackers documented their plans, and 5 researched their targets before the attack. So, to me, this report is just filled with information that parents, school administrators, friends, family can all use to identify an individual that is a potential threat. And I have to tell you, the Secret Service sent out a plan months ago to high schools and middle schools that they can use and learn how to deal with these students and identify these problems. And we are hearing more and more about thwarted attacks. We heard about one just last Friday. Thwarted attacks. That these are situations where people are following these guidelines. They see something, they say something, and the attacks are stopped. This is what information, and good research is able to give us. But it only works if we individually are willing to say something if we see something, lock up those weapons. Parents, if your children are struggling with bullying, with disciplinary issues, and you can't handle it, you've done everything you can do, please don't be afraid to seek outside help. Please don't be afraid to talk to the people at school, to talk to people at church, to go and see counselors. Please don't be afraid. Don't see it as a weakness that you're seeking outside help. I view it as a strength, a willingness to get help from wherever you can find it. It's a strength. I believe that together with this information, the vast majority of mass school shootings can be stopped. Now, it's very important to point out this was not about other shootings carried out in other places. This is a report into school shootings and attacks. And I think you would find some differences when it happens at school compared to when it happens at the workplace. And so we'll watch for more information on that. But a key to this report that jumps out in my mind is how much there is that can be done in advance to stop these things from happening. And all of it focusing on behaviors and actions and attitudes. Very little of it focusing in on getting rid of one particular type of weapon. Because as you heard in the report, they used all different kinds of weapons with all different kinds of results. We need to figure out how to save these kids. That's right. I said it. We need to learn how to save these kids who become mass shooters. What if we can intervene in advance? What if we can turn their life around? We then save all the lives of the people that they would have attacked, and we save the life of the shooter as well. That is the attitude that we have to have, if you ask me. It's a fascinating report. We'll put a link to it in this podcast so that you can read it yourself. Remember, if you see something, say something, no matter how dumb it feels.
Thanks for listening to the JMac podcast. If you'd like to donate to JMac for Congress, you can go to jmacforutah.com. That's jmacforutah.com.